The hum of machines filled the operating room like an artificial heartbeat, sterile, rhythmic, alive in its own way. Every monitor beeped in time with precision, a symphony of control. But beneath the steady pulse of medicine, Dr. Sarah Cross could hear something else: laughter. Quiet, dismissive, but sharp enough to cut through latex and steel. "Look who they assigned to assist," came a low voice behind a mask. The lead surgeon didn't even bother to whisper. "The new girl. Bet she's never seen real trauma before." Sarah didn't look up. Her gloved hands adjusted the surgical tray, clamps, scalpels, forceps, a ritual she could perform blindfolded. Each movement was economical, silent, controlled. Her reflection glinted off the instrument table, calm eyes, steady breath, a woman who had spent years patching human lives together in tents that shook from artillery fire. But here, under the fluorescent calm of Chicago Memorial, her battlefield scars were invisible. Dr. Richardson strode in, the king in his domain. "All right, people," he said, voice echoing with authority. "Let's make this textbook." His eyes landed on Sarah, a flicker of amusement curving beneath his mask. "Try to keep up, Dr. Cross." She met his gaze briefly, no words, just a faint nod. She'd learned long ago that silence could be sharper than defense. Let them underestimate her. She worked better that way. Outside, a trauma call rang through the intercom, code red incoming. The air changed instantly, sterile calm giving way to urgency. Footsteps thundered through the corridor, doors swinging open as paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. A young man, blood pooling through gauze, his breathing shallow. Gunshot wounds, chest and abdomen. "We're losing him," shouted the medic. The words hit Sarah like an echo from another life. As the gurney slid under the operating lights, her gaze locked on the soldier's face, pale, sweat-slicked, familiar. Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Her stomach turned cold. She knew that name. She knew the eyes even half-closed in shock. Kandahar, 2017. The dust, the noise, the screaming. Webb dragging 3 men out of a burning Humvee, his arm shredded, his uniform soaked in blood. The day she'd sewn him back into life under the rotor wash of a helicopter. Now he was here, bleeding out again, but not from war this time. From something closer. Something human. "Get me vitals," Richardson barked. "Let's move." Sarah's pulse was steady as she took position. It was happening again, life hanging by a thread and a room full of men who thought control came from textbooks. She leaned forward, eyes on the wound, voice low and sure. "He's crashing. We're out of time." The others didn't hear the quiet steel in her tone yet. But they would. They always did right before everything changed. The room was motion and chaos. The whir of suction, the rustle of gowns, the steady narration of vitals. Richardson called for a clamp, his voice calm but hollow. Sarah's hands hovered near the instruments, her mind already constructing a map of damage beneath the skin. Pressures dropping. 60/40, the anesthesiologist warned. Richardson frowned behind his mask. "We'll open the chest cavity. Cross, stay out of the way unless I ask." The faintest trace of resentment flickered behind her calm expression. "Stay out of the way." She had heard that before from generals, from bureaucrats, from men who'd never had blood spray across their face while saving someone with half a lung left. But she didn't argue. The patient was all that mattered. The scalpel glinted under the lights. The incision was neat, deliberate, but wrong. She could see it instantly, the pattern of the entry wound, the way the left side of the chest rose unevenly. She'd seen it 100 times before, not from enemy fire, but from a close-range civilian weapon. The damage pattern whispered a story only she could hear. Her heartbeat slowed, memory overlapping the moment. A helicopter cabin rattling. The smell of cordite. Her hands pressed into the chest of a 19-year-old Marine while the pilot screamed coordinates. Stay with me, Dr. Cross." Richardson's voice yanked her back. He was sweating now, searching for a bleed that wasn't there. BP falling. Heart rate spiking, called anesthesia. "Clamp." Richardson snapped. Sarah could see it, the misdirection, the mistake born of textbook reflex. The bleeding wasn't from where he was looking. It was deep, hidden, the kind of wound that only revealed itself when you'd watched death take shape 100 times. She stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, it's not the cardiac artery." Look at the intercostals. There's displacement. The vertebral side, Richardson shot her a glare. You're here to assist, not diagnose. A silence fell across the table, sharp as a blade. She didn't move. She couldn't. The soldier's pulse was fading on the monitor. Every instinct screamed at her, act now. Doctor, she said quietly, you're losing him. He turned, fury masking his fear. I said stand down, cross. The monitors erupted one long, unbroken tone. The flatline. In the half-second of stunned stillness that followed, the only sound was her voice, steady, commanding, undeniable. Scalpel. Now. And somehow, without thinking, everyone obeyed. Sarah moved before thought could catch up. Her tone snapped through the air like a drill sergeant's command. Clamp, suction, retractors. Stat. Dr. Richardson froze, torn between anger and disbelief, but she was already working. The sterile rhythm of surgery reawakened around her. Her hands moved fast, deliberate, surgical poetry. Not chaos, choreography. She made an incision across the posterior chest wall. We're opening the lateral cavity, she called, her voice calm in the storm. He's bleeding from behind the ribs. A resident hesitated. That's not in the protocol, neither was Kandahar, she shot back. Keep the pressure steady. As she worked, the world narrowed to tunnel vision, the glow of the overhead lamp, the pulse in her fingers, the machine's desperate rhythm. She clamped deep, past the shattered ribs, finding the source, a jagged tear in the intercostal artery. Exactly what she'd suspected. Got it, she whispered, as the arterial spray eased beneath her clamp. Suction. The beeping slowed. The flatline fractured into rhythm again, faint, fragile, but alive. Then came the moment no one expected. A trembling hand reached up from the table, Lieutenant Webb's, and caught Sarah's wrist. His eyes, glassy but awake, locked on hers. Doc, he gasped through the intubation tube, voice hoarse. Cross. Afghan, she saved us. The room froze. Richardson's gloved hands stopped mid-motion. The young resident's eyes widened. Every mask turned toward Sarah, the quiet new doctor, and the truth cut through the sterile air like a siren. The Marine wasn't hallucinating. He remembered her. Sarah's heart clenched, but her voice stayed steady. You're safe, Lieutenant. Stay with me. He managed a whisper, more air than words. She knows combat trauma. Call her. Dr. Cross. The line on the monitor steadied into rhythm, faint but real. Richardson's pride cracked like glass. He looked across the table, his arrogance gone, replaced by something raw, fear. Dr. Cross, he said quietly. What do you need? Sarah didn't hesitate. Thoracotomy tray. 2 units of O-negative. Move. No one questioned her now. The surgical team transformed, no hierarchy, no ego, just precision and obedience. They followed her cadence, her certainty. The battle-hardened calm of a soldier surgeon. Blood poured, clamps clicked, monitors steadied. When the wound sealed and the heart found its rhythm again, Sarah stepped back, eyes on the monitor. Welcome home, Marine, she whispered. The room exhaled as one, every surgeon, every nurse, every skeptic. They'd just witnessed the impossible. And they would never look at her the same way again. Absolutely, let's complete the cinematic 6-part rewritten script. You already have sections 1 to 3, so here are sections 4 to 6 to complete the story arc. Each section is about 500 words, emotional, visually cinematic, and written for screen-style storytelling. The room had changed. The same people who'd laughed behind masks now moved under Sarah's quiet command. The arrogance, the condescension, gone, replaced by a fragile, reverent silence. Dr. Richardson hovered nearby, handing her clamps like a student eager to learn. Pressure stabilizing, 110/70, the anesthesiologist reported. Good, Sarah said, her tone calm, clipped efficient. Her gloved hands worked as if guided by instinct. Years of field trauma had shaped her into something most surgeons could never become, precise under chaos, fearless under fire. The wound sealed, the blood flow eased, the monitors steadied. Sarah looked up from the field, sweat glistening under the surgical lights. Let's close. For the first time, Dr. Richardson's voice trembled. You just saved him. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence stretched, broken only by the rhythmic chirp of returning life. A hum of awe filled the room. The same residents who had smirked hours ago now moved with renewed purpose. They were no longer performing surgery, they were witnessing command. When the final suture went in, Sarah's voice softened. Pack the site. Monitor vitals every 5. Let's prep for transfer. Dr. Richardson stepped closer. Dr. Cross, I owe you an apology. Sarah peeled off her gloves, her expression unreadable behind her mask. No need. Just remember, arrogance kills faster than blood loss. A ghost of a smile flickered beneath her tone. Richardson nodded, shame and respect intertwining in his eyes. As the gurney rolled toward recovery, Sarah lingered for a moment, watching the Marine she'd saved twice in one lifetime. Her voice was barely a whisper. Welcome home, Lieutenant. 3 weeks later, the hospital corridors felt quieter, the stairs softer. Respect had replaced skepticism. Nurses greeted her by name. Richardson stopped making speeches and started listening. Sarah walked her morning rounds with a steady rhythm until she stopped dead in her tracks at the site before her. Marcus Webb. Alive. Walking. He was in the rehab wing, his hand gripping a walker, his jaw clenched in effort. Sweat beaded down his temple, but his eyes, determined, alive, found her. Dr. Cross, he said, voice still hoarse but smiling. Come see how your handiwork's holding up. Sarah's lips curved faintly. You're doing better than my sutures. They shared a small laugh, the kind that comes when words can't carry gratitude. But his smile faded slowly. Sarah, there's something I never told you. The night I got shot. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was heading to the river. Thought maybe everyone would be better off without me. Her breath caught. He swallowed hard. Then I saw that kid waving a gun at the old man in the store. Something snapped. I stopped thinking about myself. I remembered what you used to tell us in Afghanistan. As long as you're breathing, you're still in the fight. She blinked back the ache behind her eyes. You were right to fight, Marcus. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but I think you're the reason I'm still here. And for once, Sarah had no words. A few days later, Sarah found herself summoned to Dr. Richardson's office. The blinds were open, sunlight streaming in, something new, something hopeful. He stood behind his desk, holding a folder with a hospital crest. Dr. Cross, he said, clearing his throat, the board has been reviewing your work since that night. We'd like to offer you the position of Chief of Trauma Surgery. But not just that. He slid a document across the table. The words at the top made her freeze. Veteran Trauma Integration Program, Director, Dr. Sarah Cross. Richardson's voice softened. Your methods, your combat triage, your instinct under pressure, it's what modern trauma care is missing. We want you to build a bridge between what you've seen out there and what we do here. Sarah's throat tightened. The offer wasn't just a promotion. It was validation. It was a mission. Sir, she began, but he raised a hand. Don't thank me. Thank Webb. He's been in administration every day pushing for this. Said if anyone could train us to see patients as soldiers worth fighting for, it's you. Her eyes stung, not from pride, but from something quieter. Relief. Purpose. Then we start today, she said. Lieutenant Webb, now walking unaided, took the podium. 8 months ago, I thought my story was over. But then I met a doctor who didn't just save my life. She reminded me why it was worth saving. Applause rippled through the crowd. Webb turned toward Sarah, his voice steady. Dr. Cross doesn't talk much about her service. But every time she walks into an operating room, she carries the battlefield with her, not as a burden, but as proof that courage doesn't need noise. Sarah stood in the front row, her uniform pressed, her ribbons shining, not as decoration, but as history written in blood and compassion. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was between worlds. She was exactly where she belonged, at the crossing point between war and healing. After the ceremony, the crowd thinned. Balloons, flowers, applause all fading into the sterile hush of hospital corridors. Sarah walked alone toward the observation deck overlooking the city skyline. The winter light shimmered across the glass like a heartbeat. Below her, Chicago pulsed, sirens, car horns, life moving on. But inside, everything was still. She reached into her pocket and drew out something small, a dog tag, worn and bent. It wasn't hers. It had belonged to a 19-year-old corporal who didn't make it home. She'd carried it every day since Afghanistan, a silent promise that her hands would never stop fighting for the living. Behind her, a voice broke the quiet. "You still keep it?" She turned. Marcus Webb leaned against the doorway, walking cane in hand, his smile soft. "Every day," she said. "It reminds me why I came back." He nodded, eyes glimmering with something like peace. "Guess we both did." They stood there for a long moment, two survivors connected by unspoken understanding, soldier and surgeon, both rebuilt from the wreckage of war. Sarah looked out again at the skyline, her reflection caught between the city lights and the faint outline of her medals. "People think heroism is loud," she murmured. "But sometimes it's just quiet persistence." Webb smiled faintly. "Yeah, the kind that keeps hearts beating." She turned to him, a rare smile lighting her face. "You should know. You've got one hell of a stubborn heart." He chuckled. "Takes one to save one." Outside, a siren wailed, distant, familiar. Somewhere, another ambulance was racing toward the ER. Sarah slipped the dog tag back into her pocket, straightened her coat, and started walking toward the sound. Because heroes like her didn't wait for applause. They went where the need was loudest and the laughter had finally gone quiet.